Today is Sunday, March 19th, 2023. This is the second and final day of our two-day hybrid in-person and Zoom session at Endless Path Zendo. And today I'd like to take a look at another koan dealing with Manjushri Bodhisattva, the patron of the Zendo, who we install at the beginning of every session. Although he's been sitting here all along, we bring him back in just to make the point. This is one that takes a rather odd turn into what we might call a strange aspect of Manjushri's superb wisdom. This koan shows him to clearly not be in control. The case opens a vista onto the mythic, then returns us to our ordinary world, same as it ever was, and yet now a world completely transformed. This is Woman Kwan, Gateless Barrier, case number 42. Manjushri and the young woman in Samadhi. Sometimes Manjushri and young woman coming out of Samadhi or something like that, if I remember the other. There's a variety of translations. Once Manjushri went to a place where many Buddhas had assembled with the world-honored one. When he arrived, all the Buddhas had returned to their original dwelling place. Only a young woman remained seated in Samadhi near the Buddha's seat. Manjushri addressed the Buddha and asked, "How can the young woman get near the Buddha's seat when I cannot?" The Buddha replied to Manjushri, "Awaken this woman from her Samadhi and ask her yourself." Manjushri walked around the young woman 3 times, snapped his fingers once, took her to the Brahma heaven, and exerted all his supernatural powers, but he could not bring her out. The world-honored one said, "Even 100,000 Manjushris cannot awaken her. Down below, past 1,200 million lands, as innumerable as the sands of the Ganges, lives the Bodhisattva of delusive wisdom. In the early stages of practice, he will be able to bring her out of her Samadhi." Instantly, the Bodhisattva of delusive wisdom emerged from the earth and made bows before the world-honored one, who gave his imperial order. Delusive wisdom stepped before the young woman, snapped his fingers once, and at this she came out of Samadhi. Woman's commentary. The comedy old Shakya puts on the stage here is a great hodgepodge, or hodgepodge, sometimes hodgepodge. Just tell me now, Manjushri is the teacher of the 7 Buddhas. Why couldn't he get the young woman out of her Samadhi when the Bodhisattva of delusive wisdom, a beginner, could? If you can firmly grasp this point, then for you, this busy life of ignorance and discrimination will be the life of the dragon Samadhi. Woman's verse. One can awaken her, the other cannot. Both of them are free. A God mask, a devil mask. The failure is wonderful indeed. The name, by the way, Bodhisattva of delusive wisdom, is one that Aiken Roshi gave to this other beginner Bodhisattva. In the translation that I knew originally, he was named Momyo. That was just his name. Aiken Roshi clarifies the case for us with his translation, calling him the Bodhisattva of delusive wisdom. It is an important point. Remember when sitting not to be moving around, just to sit steadily, that Zazen, teisho is a practice of Zazen, not of listening to a lecture. We allow the teisho in like wind moving through the trees, like the sound of the wind in that bare empty place in the snowman poem we read yesterday. We don't hold on to it. We don't mull over it, because if we do, the teisho has moved on and left us behind. We practice the teisho. We allow it in. We allow it to go. We breathe right into it. If you're working on a koan, you continue working on the koan. If you're doing a breath practice, just be one with the listening. If you find it too complex to attend to the koan as you listen, then let listening take precedence. The advice of all the old-timers is that you should think of the teisho being given to you alone. You're not part of an audience. It's directed to you alone. So Manjushri, wise teacher of the past 7 Buddhas, can't attend the assembly of Buddhas. What might this gathering be about? And why can't Manju, which is the shortened Japanese form, attend? Most likely Buddhas have come from across the universe to swap ideas on their challenging task, how to save suffering beings. In short, they've gathered to talk shop. The story of their meeting, from which Manjushri is excluded, appears in the sutra titled The Collected Essentials of All Buddhas, where we are told that it actually took place in another galaxy, the Buddha land of Tenno Tathagata. Sutras say that there are not only vast stretches of space in our universe, but incomprehensible periods of time, endless eons between the arising of Buddha after Buddha. Here on earth we honor 7 such fully awakened beings of the past, but the chain of Buddhas is actually said to go back endlessly into distant eons, world cycles, big bangs. The koan that emerges from the story is challenging us to truly gain an understanding of both delusion and non-dual, vast, empty, selfless wisdom. But we can't sit back, relax, munch popcorn, and enjoy the show, as if we're going to be educated about wisdom and such. No. Instead, we ourselves are dragged up on stage and must join in the drama. Rather like the living theater of the 60s, it's participatory. Actors and theater-goers jumbled together. This spirit of boundless play is alive in this 1,000-year-old koan. And what a show it is! For starts, Manjushri is admitted to the gathering, yet when he enters, it turns out that all the Buddhas have returned to their original place. Why? This is a koan point. Why have all the Buddhas already returned to their original place? And where is their original dwelling place? Master Wumen reminds me here of Bob Dylan, who interestingly in his latest album, Rough and Rowdy Ways, quotes The Gateless Barrier with the lines, his eye like a shooting star. Or he says, my eye is like a shooting star. And he also quotes, I climbed a mountain of swords on bare feet. These are both lines from the Wumen Koan. What are they doing with Bob Dylan? Anyway, one day perhaps we'll find out. In an article in The Guardian, Bob Dylan at 80 in praise of a mighty and unbowed singer-songwriter, this is from 2021, we read, we are celebrating an artist who can transform his personal experience into something mythic and then back again into something that is personally meaningful to his listeners. This double operation is at the heart of his genius. Well, Wu Men walks the same line. Mythic to personal and intimate, and back again. Manjushri goes to a place of many Buddhas, and when he arrives, all the Buddhas have returned to their original place. If you get the why and wherefore of this, Aitken Roshi says that the rest of the case is in the bag for you. Except, not all the Buddhas are gone. Shakyamuni Buddha still remains, and seated close by him is a young woman deep in samadhi, out beyond her ordinary daily consciousness and seemingly, Aiken Roshi adds, rather stuck there. Why is she able to sit near the Buddha while Manjushri, the Buddha's own teacher, can't get near? This is our second interactive performative challenge. Why can't Manjushri get close when she can? Shouldn't the Bodhisattva of perfect wisdom be able to be closer to the Buddha than anyone? After all, he was the Buddha's own teacher. On a Zen Buddhist altar, Manjushri Bodhisattva traditionally sits on the Buddha's left, the heart side, and in traditional Japanese Zendos, he even replaces the Buddha himself, sitting among the sitters in the great equality of Zazen. I should add, on such an altar where he sits on the left, Samantabhadra Bodhisattva of a compassionate action would be seated on the right. But in traditional Zendos, there's no Buddha. He's been replaced by Manjushri. And instead of being up high, often against the wall in a Buddha altar, Manjushri sits on a kind of square pillar-like altar, traditionally, right out among the sitters in the middle of the room. This is the great equality of Manjushri's wisdom. And we see it visually in the way the altar for Manjushri in a Zendo is set up. And yet here, Manjushri is kept distant, while at the same time, a young woman, a beginner, sits close by the Buddha himself. What is that about? The first part of the case draws on a dark aspect of Asian and world history. Women did not have status in Asian Buddhism in its original form, which was essentially monastic. Though enlightened women periodically appear in sutras and in koan cases, rarely, though there are a few, do we meet them as actual ancestors. Fortunately, this is changing. A lot of current actual Buddhist and Zen Buddhist history is uncovering both lay people, laymen and women, but also nuns and lay women who were deeply realized. And they're being added in our lineage chart where we do the, what's that called?
Ancestral line.
Ancestral line, yes. Any name in italic is either a woman or a layperson that's been added in. Maybe just, is it just the women who are?
Yeah.
Take a look. But lay people like Layman Pong have been added, and also his daughter Ling Chao, and others have been added.
Just the women.
Just the women are italicized. Dane and Henry Roshi really felt strongly, and Aiken Roshi did as well, that the lineage is really not accurate, and that lay people and women, but he also added other teachers who were not in direct lineage, like Ikkyu, who were formative personalities and teachers, and Ryokan, who was such an important and humble poet monk, whose temple was a very moving place to visit when we were in Japan. Anyway, they've been included in our lineage, so it's not a straight lineage chart. It's encompassing, and I think rightly so. Anyway, this misogynist history lies behind the point. See, it's not simply that an ordinary person is near the Buddha while a great bodhisattva can't get close. It's that a woman is there and doing okay for a beginner in her practice, too. That's what would traditionally have made this astounding, a real mind bender, something that creates a hook for the koan to grab hold. A woman? What? Impossible! Now, this is horrifyingly up there with, does even something as lowly as a dog have Buddha nature? But remember, it is there to underscore the drama, not to uphold a narrow view. Think of an actor screaming their lines rather than just saying them. It's done for emphasis, to make a point. Here the case is doing the same, using what the culture of its time offered. But we should not overlook it. It's part of a bad history that hopefully is getting rectified. In any case, here the case may have something more up its sleeve. The young woman, her youth further emphasizing that she can have no real wisdom. The elderly in ancient China were respected, of course, not the young. She sits close to the Buddha while Manjushri is distant. So the woman, with her stains of menstruation, pregnancy, and male projected desire, is put in the higher seat, and the great Bodhisattva, teacher of the past 7 Buddhas, is put in the lower. Well, maybe there's an aspect a bit more going on here, which is that in the Lotus Sutra and the Vimalakirti Sutra as well, a Naga princess in the one and a youthful goddess in the other put the monks and arhats to shame with their insight, with their wisdom, with their skill. So perhaps the tradition is simultaneously giving a nod to a deeper truth, a universal truth, a human truth. Practice realization is actually open to all. Wisdom is actually accessible to everyone. So maybe Manjushri or the Buddha himself have set this up precisely to knock it down, and if so, bravo. Now, what is samadhi? The word samadhi is from the Sanskrit root samadha, meaning to collect or bring together, and is often translated as concentration or unification of mind. In short, it is the condition of the mind absorbed in its own presence, in silent, one-pointed, attentionless attention, a selfless, but not necessarily awakened condition. It can be pleasurable, even blissful. However, if we become attached to it, clinging to it as more real than our ordinary experience, we create another obstacle. Daily life haunted by the memory of this something more, this something special, now seems not good enough. Clinging to concepts is a problem we all face. Clinging to blissful states can be even harder to shake. Some people experiencing a kind of real peace through breath practice can then hesitate about taking on the challenge of koan practice, fearing that it will threaten their happy but not yet grounded in insight condition. If our aspiration is for awakening, faith becomes important. But faith in what? Faith in our actual nature and in our potential to awake to it. I am calling it actual nature because true nature suggests it's in opposition to something called a false or untrue nature. Perhaps this is part of the young woman's issue. She's stuck in this sort of dichotomy. She's experienced something beyond her normal condition and she can't let go of it. She thinks that's the point. Perhaps this koan can help point her and us beyond the dilemma. Roshi Kapleau often used to say, and I've repeated this so many times, but it seems to be never wasted or useless, that for Zen practice there is only one article of faith that we need. Faith that the Buddha wasn't a fool and he wasn't a liar when, upon his great enlightenment, he spontaneously exclaimed, blown away by it himself, "Wonder beyond wonders! All beings are Buddhas, fully endowed right now with wisdom and virtue. Only their self-oriented thinking prevents them from realizing this." It's a pretty astonishing statement. Right now. He wasn't saying when you've done all the work, many lifetimes from now. He's saying right now, your actual nature is the nature of wisdom and compassion. Nothing else. The only reason we don't experience that is because we're so habituated to thinking in self-centered loops. It's a habit. If he wasn't a fool and he wasn't a liar, then what did he mean? And at some point we begin to think, hey, all beings means me. But how can I be a Buddha? I'm filled with confusion, anxiety, anger, jealousy, pettiness. And if we're all Buddhas, why all this suffering? Why all this anxiety? Why all this injustice? Why misogyny? Why racism? Why environmental destruction of our own home? What's going on? Probing into these doubts is the path of practice realization. Faith and doubt are not two things. Doubt, in this case, which is not skepticism but openness and wonder, is faith in action. This doubt, which is faith, offers us the freedom to question and wonder and probe into why things are the way they are. Who am I? Why am I here? Why was I born? Where am I going? Why must I die? Why do things seem so messed up on our beautiful planet with its diverse and increasingly threatened ecosystems and life forms? So while calm and steadiness of mind and emotion are valuable, very valuable, they are not the point. What is the point? Wu Men uses the koan to help us find out. To continue. Why can't the Bodhisattva of greatest wisdom, who is clear on all of this, get near to the Buddha, while someone new to practice and not even considered to have much potential, someone rather stuck in their beginner's zazen, sits so close to him? The koan's first challenge was, where did the Buddhas go? And its second is, why can the young woman be close when Manjushri can't? It's rather crazy, isn't it? Upside down. Then again, so is ordinary reality when you really think about it. Who is in the driver's seat? As an aside, I wonder what the young woman does once she's awakened from her samadhi. Raise a family, get a job, become Greta Thunberg, and dedicate her life to saving the planet? Case 46 of the gateless barrier stepping from the top of the 100-foot pole goes like this. Master Xishuang said, how do you step forward from the top of a 100-foot pole? Another eminent master of former times said, you who sit on the top of a 100-foot pole, although you have entered the way, it is not yet genuine. Take a step from the top of the pole, and the worlds of the 10 directions are your total body. Her being close to the Buddha bugs Manjushri, so he asks the Buddha directly, what's going on? The Buddha responds with equal directness, awaken her and find out yourself. Good advice. I won't tell you about it. Do the work, and you'll know it intimately for yourself. It will take effort. And Manju gives his all. He snaps his fingers next to the young woman's ears. He circumambulates around her to get her attention. He takes her up to the highest Brahma heavens, way up where the splendor of it might snap her out of her more limited condition, or where looking down from such heights might frighten her into wanting to return to her ordinary condition. Nothing doing. None of it works. Manjushri, the great Bodhisattva, teacher of the past 7 Buddhas, fails. Why? This is another koan point. Not only couldn't he get close to the Buddha, but he, the wisest of all bodhisattvas, can't even bring this young woman out of samadhi. What is the function of absolute wisdom? What is Manjushri's purpose? He can't go where the Buddhas assemble. He can't get a beginner in practice, a young woman no less, to awaken from a limited samadhi. Strange, isn't it? Or is it? Like Manjushri, we have to answer for ourselves. We have to solve the mystery. To do that, we have to commit to the question, to the doubting, to the unsettling condition of not knowing. Why can't Manjushri enter the assembly of Buddhas? Why have all the Buddhas gone back to their original place? What and where is their original place? Why can't Manjushri get close to the Buddha while the young woman can? And why can't he awaken her out of her samadhi? And as if all that wasn't enough, the plot thickens, adding a final humiliating twist for the wisest of all bodhisattvas. A beginner bodhisattva, who we've been told resides countless worlds, world systems, or galaxies away, immediately appears as if close at hand and, without hesitation, quickly and easily awakens the young woman, just like that. And that's the case. Wu Men himself calls it a total hodgepodge, a mishmash, a conglomeration of things messily just jumbled together. Here's Wu Men's commentary. The comedy old Shakya puts on the stage here is a great hodgepodge. Just tell me now, Manjushri is the teacher of the 7 Buddhas. Why couldn't he get the young woman out of her samadhi when the bodhisattva of delusive wisdom, a beginner, could? If you can firmly grasp this point, then for you, this busy life of ignorance and discrimination will be the life of the dragon samadhi. If you can firmly grasp this point of how come Manjushri, the teacher of the 7 Buddhas, couldn't get the young woman out of her samadhi when the bodhisattva of delusive wisdom, a beginner, could. If you can firmly grasp this point, then for you, this busy life of ignorance and discrimination, this life we know, will be the life of the dragon samadhi. So, why comedy in the sense of farce? And what's the hodgepodge? But here's the payoff. If you can get clear on this, Wu Men says that for you, this very life, with its absurdities, challenges, injustices, its joys, its sorrows, its ups and downs, will itself be the dragon samadhi. That is not simply a condition of calm, of peace, or bliss, not even a momentary experience of oneness. The dragon samadhi is liberation, realization, enlightenment itself. Like a great dragon, it swallows up everything, not just little me, myself, and I, but the entire universe in a single gulp. What limitation could there then be? Hold on now. Wait, not so fast. You get that? Our ordinary life with its problems and challenges, its difficulties and messes, its misunderstandings, will be enlightenment itself? Really? Can this ordinary, crazy, time-factored, limited life with its failed relationship, missed opportunities, anxieties, injustices, anger, sorrows, fleeting joys be the great liberation? Wu Men's commentary doesn't simply say we should have faith in this. It's not asking for piety or belief in this as an option. It's telling us that this is simply so. which simultaneously challenge us to find out its truth for ourselves. He holds a carrot before us to realize the great dragon samadhi is a very tantalizing possibility. But the stick is there too, which is the pain that comes from not getting clear, of living as a so-called failure. An inability to get this can block us. It's painful, it's frustrating. Carrot and stick. Aitken Roshi writes, doing Zazen teaches Zazen. Kapla Roshi used to say, if you don't let the Dharma down, the Dharma will never let you down. And that nothing sincerely done is a wasted effort if it's all part of our journey toward maturity. In short, virtue is its own reward. But virtue doesn't mean goodness. The virtue of iron is strength. The virtue of ice is cold. Don't get hung up on success or failure. The practice practices and creates a previously unknown, untrodden path, which is a blessing in itself. Is this your life will be the dragon samadhi, false news, or the real deal? Wu Men is not being reassuring. He's not holding our hand saying, one day, when this gets clear, you'll live well. He's not saying, if you're good one day, you'll get to heaven. Wu Men is talking about the truth of your life and mine right now. This count, this breath, this koan point, this not knowing, this confusion, this effort is its realization and the way to it. The failure is wonderful indeed, is an insight into reality, as we'll see. For the verse goes, one can awaken her, the other cannot. Both of them are free. A God mask, a devil mask. The failure is wonderful indeed. The failure is wonderful indeed. One can, one can't. If that is life, isn't it unfair? Aren't differences unfair? Often it seems so. Shakespeare was an immediate success. Melville never received one positive review on his masterpiece, Moby Dick. Picasso hits it out of the park, and Van Gogh never sells a single painting. One can awaken her, and the other cannot. Wu Men asserts that both are free. Really? Really? How is Manjushri free? And how is the Bodhisattva of delusive wisdom free? How is Einstein free? And how is Walt Disney free? Put on a God mask and we bow in awe. Wear a devil mask and everyone runs off in terror. Which mask do you wear? How often in a single day might you take off one and put on another? Like Manjushri, we do our best. Yet, can failure be wonderful indeed, as the verse says? We dread failure. Our schooling instills this deeply in us. We want A's, not F's. In the movie The Right Stuff, when Alan Shepard, the first astronaut to be launched into space, is being sealed into his tiny capsule perched on top of a lethally explodable rocket, there at the knife edge of life and death, he utters his heartfelt prayer, "Oh Lord, don't let me fuck up." He's not asking to survive. He's asking not to fail. So is Manjushri's failure wonderful indeed, or is it sour grapes? Is the koan saying that in the long run, even painful things are for the best? Isn't that something of a dodge? And, oh well, good enough. Wouldn't that be to mistake a bell for a pot, as Wumen says elsewhere? Then again, a snake's inability to gallop makes it a wonderful snake, not a failed horse. To know such wonderful failure, we must awake to Manjushri's nothing at all, to the vast wisdom that is just this, in which there is no me, no you, no self, no other, which does not mean nothingness. Yamana Roshi was known to encourage his students to, quote, beat the empty sky, unquote. At the same time, we must also live the life of Momyo, the beginner bodhisattva of delusive, incomplete wisdom, seeing what is in front of us, acting and living wholeheartedly, responding without airs. Zen mind, beginner's mind might be a cliche, yet snapping his fingers, Momyo awakes the young woman, just like that. A molecule on one side of the universe, we're told, will rotate in synchronicity with its twin on the universe's other side. The bodhisattva of delusive wisdom and the young woman are a pair. When he snaps his fingers, she comes out of meditation, adjusts her robe, brushes back a strand of hair, and heads off to speak to heads of state about climate change. They get each other. They speak the same language. Why? How? And how come Manju is out in the cold? A great old Irish tale about the great warrior, poet, shaman, King Fionn, or Fionn, sometimes Finn, but Fionn is really how it's pronounced, I believe, asks, what is the most beautiful music? His men give many different answers, all of them quite terrific, to the question, what is the most beautiful music? And to each one he answers, beautiful music, but not the most beautiful music. And finally, they turn to him and say, Chieftain, what then is the most beautiful music? And Finn's answer is the music of what happens. It turns the brief tale into a kind of koan. Not that I know anything about quantum mechanics, but quantum mechanics seems to agree. This very reality we inhabit is the result of the failure of all other possible options. Endless lines of quantum possibility collapse into the single line we call reality, which forms right under our fingers and toes and eyes and ears. All other possible lines are no-shows in this instant, failures. The taste of this tea. This tea. The pink of blossoms. The caw of a crow. The failure is wonderful indeed. Manju out in the cold? Terrific! Wonderful! It's hard not to think of realization in terms of winning and losing, attaining and failing. When passed on a koan, it's way to go, bravo, success, and it is a big relief after all. To be stuck on a koan is what a drag. I'm not very good at this. It's really terrible. I can't stand this. Why am I doing it? And yet, isn't realization actually the ego's greatest failure? Dylan adds, there's no success like failure, and failure's no success at all. Roshi Kapleau used to ask at workshops, let's say you have an alcohol problem. Who could help you more, a therapist or a reformed alcoholic? Then he would answer saying, Both. They both could be helpful, each in their own way. Yamada Roshi wrote, take the example of a jet plane. 100,000 manjushris might not be able to get the plane started, but a jet pilot could do it instantly or easily. Manjushri and Momyo, the bodhisattva of delusive wisdom, like the delusive wisdom bodhisattva and the young woman, also form a pair. Both Manjushri and Momyo, the bodhisattva of delusive wisdom, are wisdom holders. Manju can't do a thing without Momyo. Momyo has no essential wisdom without Manju. What is that telling us about our own lives? And what is the difference between the two kinds of wisdom? The great, profound wisdom of Manjushri Bodhisattva and the wisdom of the beginner, delusive wisdom Bodhisattva. What's the difference between these two kinds? And here's the final challenge in our play. Which is greater, Momyo's wisdom or Manju's? What do you say? Though this is somewhat off topic, here's a story. Back in the 60s, Dane and Henry Roshi had an old VW bus. Maybe everyone did. I know we did too. One night as he was driving along a lonely rural road, his old bus broke down. Cursing and grumbling, he started walking along the empty highway or roadway, rural road, toward the lights of a farmhouse that were twinkling a mile or so ahead. As he walked along the empty roadway, the odors of trees and plants, of field and forest came to him on soft night breezes. The Milky Way rippled and shone overhead. It became one of the most beautiful walks and memorable nights of his life. It was a wonderful, wonderful failure. To turn back to Bob Dylan, the erstwhile failed Iron Country Minnesotan, once known as Bobby Zimmerman, right now, I can't read so good. Don't send me no more letters. No, not unless you mail them from Desolation Row. We'll stop here and recite our great vows for all. I'll also turn off the recording and turn the computer around so that we can all make our vows to Manjushri and the Buddha up on the altar.